My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
I am joined in the studio and I welcome back our long-standing friend Rachel Mathews-McKay. Rachel, welcome back again.
Thank you, it's great to be back.
Yes, Rachel, we won't dwell on it, but what's your initial impressions about the election result? Is it overwhelming joy, fear, confusion? What are you making of it all?
I'm going to say all of the above. I'm also going to make a point of saying that I'm not here to talk about politics, obviously, but on a personal note. Yeah, it's all of the above. I mean, there's losers and winners in every election, and I was delighted, of course, to see Catherine Zapound last night elected. That was just fantastic. But then I'm quite sad. In the last hour or two, we've heard that Aodhán Riordan has been knocked out, and and Kevin. Humphreys as well. I mean, and I'm talking about Dublin candidates, but of course, all across the country, people are reeling and shocked and happy and all sorts.
And leaving aside Catherine, which we don't want to do because she's such a good friend to both of us.
Yes.
All the LGBT, the last parliament was what we would call an LGBT breakthrough parliament. Yep. Every one of them have been, shall we say, not voted back. Jerry Buttimer, John Lyons, Dominic Hannigan. People that we all know and like and respect. That's a bit sad, isn't it?
It is. I think so, and not just because of their LGBT identities.
They were
good speakers.
They were good people in their own right. Yeah. And they were across the board as well.
Of course, yeah.
But look, Catherine, as I say, we know her both well.
Yes,
and, Now, what we're here to talk about today, Rachel, is something that you're calling Burning Issues 2, or as I'm even calling it, Burning Issues the sequel. Just recollect for people, what was Burning Issues 1 and why we're now doing Burning Issues 2?
Yeah, in 2009, the National Lesbian, Gay and Transgender Federation, or it was at the time NLGF, conducted a survey and... it was a very successful survey, I would say, and it asked some very pertinent questions and produced some fun, frightening, but also, I suppose, answers that could focus our minds as to what what we should be campaigning for, or what the community issues and what the burning issues are for people around the country. Now, in the first edition, should I say, the Burning Issues 1 survey, the top 5 issues were bullying, violence, equal rights at work, marriage equality, support for younger LGBT people, and support for people in coming out. Now, and there were variations of the the order in which they're important depending on Dublin respondents and more rural, or should I say out of Dublin respondents. But essentially, I mean, I suppose looking back over the last 5 years, you could say, Belong To have done amazing work, and not just Belong To, but you've got Dundalk Outcomers, Link, you've got various organisations, Mark LGBT in Galway, all sorts of community groups around the country who have looked at these kind of responses from people around the country and said, hang on now, these are the issues. So Belong To, as I said, and those groups have focused their energies on kind of, tackling these issues.
Sure.
I mean, it was very useful. Obviously, as you know, and the last time I was here, I was speaking on behalf of the SIP2 LGBTQ network, and I was talking very specifically about equal rights at work, but also why the trade union movement should be supporting marriage equality. And it had a lot to do with the fact that this Burning Issues survey, and the first one was co-sponsored by SIP2 itself.
Can I ask you just one question? And it just strikes me, looking at that, and it's not so much even about the conclusions, but more the methodology.
Okay.
And the conclusions suggest to me that this was largely filled in by younger people. And I just wonder about that. Now, as I say, it's purely like for argument's sake, coming out it's probably not that much of an issue for people in their 40s and 50s. I won't say it's not. Bullying in work is not an issue for pensioners. So I'm just looking at certain demographics now. I'm not knocking it, but it just strikes me that these are issues, rightly, that younger people would have as a concern. Now, it's not to say that they override everything else, but just, as I say, just was querying the methodology rather than the conclusions.
Well, I wasn't involved in the first burning issue survey, and I think why I was invited to be involved in the second one is because I was so passionate about the first. Yes, I mean, it is a good question in terms of methodology and reaching out to a wide variety of people and ensuring that we get good answers, or not. Well, there's no right or wrong answer, of course, but in terms of a good array of respondents. So we are working harder to make sure. I mean, you talk about age, and I would say that perhaps not as many older people are as social media savvy.
Sure.
So at the moment we've just launched. We've been sending out the survey via social media or through the internet.
Indeed.
I mean, there is an ad for it in the GCN and in other places.
No, you've been doing great coverage on the internet, and that's what we want.
But of course, if you don't have access, and it mightn't be to do with age, it might be that you live in Cavan and the internet's not very good. Yeah. So there's all kinds of reasons. But in terms, I'm actually going to go back to that point you mentioned about age and coming out. Obviously, I was very involved in the referendum and was involved in securing that referendum for a number of years. I mean, there were many methods or ways in which I was involved in the campaign for the last 11 years. But my experience, and I suppose, because I wear so many hats and move around the country and talk to so many different people in a variety of ways, a lot of the feedback I've been getting from friends and family and outside of the LGBT community in particular I'm going to talk about is that the amount of straight or heterosexual people, and you can't see this, but inverted commas, who are more fluid than we think. Yeah. And the referendum for lots of people, and this is the feedback I've been getting, was a sexual revolution for them as much as it was for us LGBT queer people. And therefore you might find that there are 40, 50-year-olds, who haven't had the chance to name their bisexuality or their gender fluidity just yet. Yeah. And that post-referendum, they now have permission to do that.
That's a really interesting point, because that's... in many respects, and I just want to hate to use the analogy of politics, if you went back 50 years, you had two parties, you had two genders, we had, and you probably had, two sexualities.
Officially.
Yeah, pardon?
Officially.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And what we've seen in this referendum, we still have two parties out there, and that's fine, and half the people want them, but there's 50% of people out there saying, hold on, whatever it is, we might not even be able to define it, but we're in that other 50%, and I suspect that's what your survey is going to find out.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's going to be so many knock-on effects, positive, and hopefully not too many negative knock-on effects post the conversations that we had last year around the referendum. I mean, the referendum obviously, it goes without saying, was a huge success and a huge boost for all of us, for those that and we have the choice as to whether we wish to marry or not. But it went beyond that. It was all the conversations that people may never have had, wanted to have, and did have.
Okay. Can I ask you then now something we always have to be, we have to take into consideration, whether it's an LGBT survey that's online or whether it's even filling in a form. Confidentiality is usually quite important. People are happy to give you the data, but they don't want that data anyway necessarily traceable back to them. How can they be, what reassurance can you give people with that, particularly say with the online?
Oh, well, I mean, the director, I mean, it's the NLG, or NXF, should I say, would be they'd be very sensitive about that. This isn't information, I'm involved, I'm on the steering committee, okay. I'm involved with the communication side of it, but I haven't seen any of the surveys. Okay. So, like, if I, if someone were to fill it out, I've no idea who's filling it out. All I see are numbers.
Okay.
I don't know anything about individuals or names. Now, the only thing I would say is that we're also doing a series of focus groups, so I will be facilitating 2 of those focus groups. And that's, we have a consent form and people will willingly...
Well, a focus group I would expect is, it's eye contact as opposed to filling in a form or filling in a survey on, online, which, you could be lying even about it, but a focus group, that's different. People give consent to that. Tell me then, first of all, what significant changes came out of the first one, the first survey? Clearly we're in a different environment now, and you're looking at probably a different range of questions, and formulating a different range of policy on that. What perhaps would we say were the milestones? Would the marriage equality referendum be considered the milestone that came out of the first one? Or at least contributed to it in that regard.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wasn't involved, as I said, in the first one, so I'm not sure what all the thinking was behind it, except that, I mean, and I'm not on the NXF board, but I'm, obviously I've been working with members of the board, and while there's nowhere, it doesn't say anywhere that this is an LGBT census. It almost acts as one, and therefore, I mean, we're not trying to shape. We don't have an agenda in terms of what we hope it will achieve, other than that people, and as many people as possible, will fill it out and inform us. I mean, essentially, I look at this survey as a very valuable piece of public record.
Sure.
And therefore obviously to a certain extent, the questions aren't so prescriptive that we're telling people what they should care about. We're asking, it's a very open situation, we're asking people to tell us what they care about. What are their burning issues?
Well, it's very interesting if you have a look at the previous one where we do the rankings and of 1 to 5. The first 2, I would have said, were micro issues. In other words, they relate directly back to the person. Whereas the next 3, which was marriage equality, support for younger people, and support for people coming out, are probably more societal. I'm not disputing that there's personal dimensions to it, but it would seem that the environment you were looking at there, personally experiencing LGBT, was very much to the fore, and hopefully then the environment that we've evolved in the since then is much more conducive to that we can look at perhaps macro solutions. I just wonder how you feel about that.
Well, I don't actually agree with your interpretation. Okay. First of all, because actually when you look at equal rights at work, you could look at it as individuals were being bullied, or an individual case was happening at work. But actually, when you look at 2015, yes, marriage equality was a significant, huge campaign that we were all, for the most part, involved in. But the other things that happened in 2015 were the amendment of Section 37.1 and the Gender Recognition Bill. So actually, and obviously, as I said, I'm not here representing SIP2 LGBTQ, but when I was here the last time, I talked about workplace rights being a serious issue for all kinds of people. Obviously, Section 37.1 affected healthcare workers and teachers, but our healthcare workers and teachers affect us all. They are educating our children. They're nursing us in our ill health. So it's not. I wouldn't say that equal rights at work are a micro issue, because
I probably didn't describe that terribly well.
Their situation in work directly affects how they teach us or how they take care of us. So obviously a healthy, happy worker it benefits us all.
In many respects, maybe I need to clarify myself here, because we've just come out of an election. In 2011, when I was covering the election, marriage equality barely came up, if at all. Now that's when it came up then as a societal issue, but whereas when I talked to LGBT people back then, getting bullied in schools, violence, being discriminated against in work, and so on and so forth. These are very real issues then. They probably still haven't gone away either, even if we've strengthened them. So that's why just, while I appreciate it's a snapshot to a certain degree, it's one of those will we take out now? Because we had, even though it wasn't the highest priority,
No.
it was successfully, shall we say, addressed.
But also, I think what it did was is it opened the door for so many people and for society as a whole to have conversations about all of the things that matter to us. So, you know, I mean, and not just to the LGBT community or to the queer community, but, you know, to, as I said, you know, it gave people who don't necessarily prescribe to what was the traditional interpretation of marriage, but for them to say, well, actually, this is a revolution for us too.
Yeah.
I may identify as a heterosexual or straight person, but actually, I would like to have my own autonomy or make my own decisions about my love life and relationship.
Absolutely.
Life.
But if we have a look, if we take marriage equality out of the top 5 ranking, the other 4 are still there, and in fact they probably are still relatively in the same ranking.
I mean, then if you look at the other issues as well, you know, you've got mental health services. I mean, those were the top 5, but on the other page here that we've just got in front of us of the breakdown of the last, the first survey, you know, did talk about support for older people, parenting, tackling poverty against LGBT people. I mean, those things haven't gone anywhere. As long as we have, obviously, I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but as long as we have, as long as public representatives and manifestos and policies don't put these issues to the forefront or don't work on them, then we'll always have these difficulties. And I guess, you know, we're still coming through a very difficult financial, economic period as a nation. And my fear is that all around the country, some really important community groups are missing out. Or there's individuals who are all by themselves without the supports because they don't have a car or they don't have the internet. So maybe they aren't going to be filling out this form, and that does bother me. But, you know, it's how to reach them and it's how to meet our community needs.
But then I'm going to ask you, and I think we need to impress upon people that we need to hear your views, because whether, and I'm going to be political here, and I'm going to say that the only viable administration we can look at is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and for me, I cannot see them putting LGBT rights as the top of their agenda, and I can't see them putting repealing the 8th as the top of their agenda. So what we discovered first time round, if you want something like marriage equality to get up, you have to identify the issues, and then you have to, shall we say, progress the issues the way some of these. How do you feel about that then, Rachel? That or do you think they're going to just continue on? Do you think 2 Conservative parties have heeded the light and they're now going to say, oh, we must put LGBT there as part of our programme for government?
I think it's up to us. I think it's always up to us. I think it's up to activists, it's up to activism, it's up to NGOs and student activists and, you know, the various different community groups. It's always up to us, whoever's in government, that we have to put ourselves forward and we have to put our issues forward. And I think, you know, over the next 5 years, this survey, I mean, I think that this should be like a census, that you're obviously the national census is also happening this year, so it's not, I think I'm not sure if it's a coincidence or on purpose, but why not? Every 5 years, let's review where we're at.
Okay.
And I would really strongly impress upon people that don't waste time, you know, fill it out. I promise you, it takes no more than 10 minutes.
Okay, tell us the essential details. When is it running until? When have you got until? Because we want people to do it as quick as possible rather than to leave it till the last minute. But when does the survey expire?
Let's say you have another month.
You have another month.
You have a whole month.
Well, we will be reminding them.
And then we need time to put it together.
Of course, yes.
Obviously, as I said, it's not a question of the NXF agenda. It's just putting all together, and getting out and.
For those who, as you say, who've either got poor broadband or they mightn't have the internet, but they still want to, you know, they might be listening to this on the radio and they think, yes, is there a manual way of doing this other than GCN, or is there any forms that they could actually write off and say send them to me, or is it purely going to be electronic, Rachel?
For now, it is purely electronic. What I would say is we have been in touch with, as I said, LGBT groups around the country, predominantly around the focus groups. What we will be doing is asking community leaders if they know of people or if they're approached to print it, or to print it out and fill it out and get it back as any way they can.
Or if we can get the libraries on board, because they're usually very good. Most of the libraries I've seen have got good IT facilities these days. So while you're borrowing a book or whatever, that'll be just go in there and call it up. What's the any idea what the website is?
I do. It's www.nxf.ie/burning issues 2.
So just think of it, burning issues.
Yep.
And
hashtag is by issues 2.
Yeah.
We have a Facebook page and a Twitter page, and please engage and share and as I said, the more people that fill it out, then the more informed we are as to what people's burning issues are.
Indeed, and I found that the quick way to find it is just to type in burning issues 2 and to Google, and you'll get it. Unfortunately, Rachel, we have run out of time, but if we can help with this survey, we will be delighted to do so here on LGBT Life.